In today's show, we're going to go for a bike ride in California, see a horse race in Kentucky. This show is all about taking care of what we have, and it all starts right after this. I'm Alan Smith. Welcome to the show. You know, it's very important for us to take care of what we have. So in today's show, we've got a conservation message, but we're going to go to lots of different places and talk about some pretty exciting things. For instance, we're going to head off to California for the Tour de Trees. And I want to take you to the Kentucky Derby. You wouldn't believe what gorgeous gardens they have there. And I also want to talk about some of the heritage or heirloom varieties of vegetables. Now when I came in, I was carrying this tray. Looks like a pan full of peat moss biscuits, but actually this is the way I start seedlings. We're going to talk about a fall vegetable garden. But before that, let's head off to California. We're going to take a look at that fun bike ride. It all starts right after this. You know, it's really encouraging, even inspiring to know that there's so many organizations out there that are dedicated to preservation, dedicated to taking care of what we have, like the Sierra Club, or the Nature Conservancy, or the Audubon Society. And then there are other groups, for instance, groups that save heirloom seeds. And there are even people who get on bicycles and go for long rides to help protect the trees. I was a part of a group, the Tour de Trees, that was really a lot of fun and very interesting. Before I knew it, they had me in a uniform and on a bike, and I found myself traveling down the California coastline on a tour designed to promote tree conservation. And along the way, as you might suspect, I met some really interesting people.
This is my fourth tour, and it's just phenomenal, just the diversity of the landscape in California.
Oh, it's gorgeous, isn't it?
It takes your mind off the miles that you have to put in. It's all psychological. You know, you get a little bit of physical training, but the views, the mountains, the ocean.
The thing about it is, it's all for a good cause.
The Tour de Trees is the biggest fundraising event that the Tree Fund has. It all goes for research and education, and then eventually just gets put back into our communities so we have healthier urban forests.
Now, you work for a power company,
That's right.
Which seems like an odd thing to me because we think of power companies as those who go in and cut trees out in a very irresponsible way. It's nice to see someone from the power company side involved in an event like this.
Yeah, a lot of companies hire professional foresters to maintain the rights of way. There are a few or handful of utility foresters here on the tour, and they have a passion that really cares about the industry, not just to be able to clear wires because of the tree conflict, but to be able to give back in a different way for the research and education, because it can funnel back into the utility industry and help our cause also.
How do you help the consumer with tree planting? Because it seems like there are a lot of trees planted in the wrong place, which is usually the reason they are pruned or cut back in such a horrific way.
Right, a lot of people don't understand what that tree's going to look like in 5 or 10 years, and then we have to deal with it. The 3 R's of proper tree care would be right tree, right place, and planted in the right way. It'd be very, very important. It's simple to remember. Planting of a tree, it doesn't involve rocket science, but it involves a lot of forethought and planning and aftercare. It really does.
Particularly if you want those trees to be there for generations to come.
Right, it's a big investment. I mean, they'll add a lot back to the community. You spend a little bit of time now, allow that tree to grow. They're genetically meant to be around for a long time. If you care for them, they can add a lot and bridge a lot of different generations and help them out too.
Now I have to say, those 3 R's of trees are good tips to remember. And if you'd like more information on this topic and a lot more, just visit my website, pallansmith.com. Now up next, we'll move from tree conservation to being water wise, and a little later a visit to the Churchill Downs. So stay with us. I brought this container in today to show you some examples of how we've taken our heritage of native plants and actually improved upon them for garden plants. This is a tiny container, but it's very showy. In the front here I have Intensia lavender phlox, which is derived from a native phlox that you find in the Southwest. It's very drought tolerant. Behind it is a beautiful heuchera, or coral bells. This variety is called mocha mint. And just look at the gorgeous coloration of the leaves. The contrast between these blooms and the leaves really makes for a good partial shade container. You know, there are lots of people out there working on some of our natives. That's what goes on at Euro-America Propagators. But they also are committed to water conservation. And in California, that's certainly very important, and it's a lesson we should all follow. Jerry Church shares some of the ways his company is being water-wise.
Water features like this are important items in a garden. They add a lot of character to a garden, but water here in Southern California is really a shortage. We brought a lot of water in here to make everything nice and green. But water reclamation is one of the most important things we do here at our nursery. We have to do everything possible to recapture the water. The way we used to water out here was just a hose. We had a bunch of people walking around with a hose. But that is so inefficient that we had to find a better way, because conserving water is going to be important to everybody in the entire country. So we started putting in things like boom irrigation that goes overhead, because in reality, what you have is you just have a plant that needs water in the pot. You don't need water all around the pot or running down the side of the pot. So we put in a boom system here, which has cut back our water by almost 50%. And this year alone, we've added some new features, and it's cut it another 40%. And these are things that a lot of homeowners can do too in their own home to try and save water, because that's where we have a lot of waste, is in our gardens. We put a lot of water on plants, a lot more than they need. And there's other systems that you can put out there that will save that kind of water. Here at Euro-American, we believe that this nursery here does something really great for the environment, because we have greenhouse gases coming out the tailpipes of our automobiles, and yet we produce the only product that takes greenhouse gases out of the atmosphere and returns breathable oxygen that all of us need. It's such a great industry, and if you want to reduce your carbon footprint, this is one way to do it. Plant a plant, plant a tree, plant a shrub, but be sure that when you do that you water it wisely.
So how about a trip to Louisville, Kentucky, and a little later this delicious Blackberry Cobbler recipe? I have to say, I've been a fan of Superbell's Calibrachoa for a long time. The flowers of the yellow chiffon Calibrachoa have an amazing creamy yellow color that can blend well with cool palettes. It also works with warm palettes. Yellow chiffon has a trailing habit with healthy foliage and tons of small blooms. Superbells attract hummingbirds and butterflies, and we consider them pet-friendly around the farm. I recently went to Louisville, Kentucky, to the site where the Kentucky Derby was started, Churchill Downs. This historical place is not only known for the exciting horse racing, but also for the beautiful grounds. John Backert, Chief of Horticulture at the Downs, took some time out of his busy day to give us a tour. John, it's such a pleasure to come out here and see these gorgeous animals. I've been here before when the race is going on, but now you can really focus on these animals.
You know, it's a great setting to be here.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I enjoy, of course, are the plantings, and you as Director of Horticulture are sort of the maestro that pulls the color together for a very long season of races.
Our fall season begins at the end of October and then runs through the weekend after Thanksgiving. So, you know, we're post-frost. We have a lot of things to deal with as far as that, and we rely a lot on texture and color, but we get some things that are blooming too.
Well, I saw some gorgeous things driving in. I'd love to go on a tour.
Absolutely, let's go.
Let's do it. Well, John, this is probably, at least to me, the second most recognizable place at Churchill Downs. First would be the spires, then here Winter Circle.
Hallowed ground to horsemen.
And what beautiful plantings here. Again, I can't believe we're almost to November and you've got geraniums blooming like this.
Right, and I'll keep these geraniums in until they really take a good freeze and get knocked down. They last quite a bit of cold, but I've got another group of mums coming to put in as soon as these go bad.
I see. Well, it looks like your knockouts across the back are holding their own.
Yeah, they're kind of holding their own. They're kind of doing the backbone of the work in this garden right now.
So John, this is Aristides.
Aristides, the first Kentucky Derby winner, 1875.
Wow, so that would have been the first race.
Absolutely.
Now, this must be one of the oldest parts of Churchill Downs.
This is the Aristides Garden, which is located just beyond the Jockey Club wall, where the spires are. It's done in 1895. And, you know, we're double knockout. This rose has been great for me. I come in here, I just whack this thing down, fertilize it a little bit.
And it's the perfect ring around Aristides. And what's so interesting to me is that, I mean, we are, mid-October, late October, and look at the blooms on this thing.
I cut this thing down, probably 18, 24 inches, fertilize it, and normally I've found that if I do this during the early part of the growing season, I have color again in about 3 to 4 weeks. It's tremendous flower power, minimum maintenance.
Yeah, but what I love about the whole knockout series is that they are so disease resistant.
I have found that to be really true. I have very few problems. I don't use fungicides on my knockout roses, never have.
Yeah, well, the whole place is just outstanding, John. I mean, congratulations.
All right, thank you.
You bet. Thanks for having us.
Oh, I'm glad you guys could come out.
If you know me, you know I like to mix things up. In my spring garden, almost every year you're likely to see tulips, but along with those tulips, you may find lettuce, a vegetable, or an herb like parsley growing together. That leads me to this question from Tina in Scottsdale, Arizona. Tina says, you know, Alan, I like the idea of mixing flowers and vegetables together to save on watering and weeding. And I want some tips on how to do things that look great even after I harvest the vegetables. Great question, Tina. Now, one of the first things you'll want to do when mixing flowers and vegetables as well as herbs is to establish which plants are cool season and which are warm season. For instance, you want to make sure that your combos match. Cool season flowers such as pansies, alyssum, nasturtium, sweet peas are all good matches with lettuce, kale, broccoli, green onions. While warm season vegetables such as tomatoes and cucumbers pair well with marigolds, sunflowers, ornamental sweet potato vine, or as far as that goes, the edible kind of sweet potato vine. You should also pick up some flowers that are reliable self-seeders for each season. Red corn poppy, cosmos, flowering tobacco, Johnny jump-ups will grow and reseed themselves naturally and fill your garden until your next vegetable or perennial spreads out. Now, another quick tip for you. You may want to keep on hand some extra large pots of flowers, such as Vista bubblegum pink petunias, or this wonderful lantana called Citrus Blend, or try this plant called Broadway Lights Daisy, a great bloomer. You see, these can all fill in the garden as the season progresses. Up next, this delicious Blackberry Cobbler recipe. I always enjoy this part of the show because we're talking about one of my favorite things to do, and that is eat. You know, we talk about delicious recipes, but when I can fold in a great tasting recipe along with an interesting place, that even makes it more fun for me. The Capitol Hotel is a historic hotel in downtown Little Rock. It has a great restaurant in it called Ashley's. Now, before we head into the kitchen, I want to bring you up on the rooftop for a moment to share with you a little garden that I designed. You see, this is a rooftop garden that is made up of planter boxes, primarily filled with small trees and shrubs, mainly evergreens. The goal here was to create a landscape on which guests in the floors above could look down upon. Now, we certainly wouldn't have seen trees growing on top of this building back in the 1880s, but today I think it adds a certain panache and makes use of underutilized space. It's really just more attractive to look at. Kendra Watkins is the pastry chef at the Capitol Hotel restaurant Ashley's, and she gives us her recipe for Blackberry Cobbler.
One of the easiest and most delicious desserts to prepare is a cobbler with fruit that's in season and a few basic kitchen ingredients. It's just a matter of mixing and topping and then baking. One of my favorite berries to use of the summer are blackberries. I used to spend my summers picking blackberries by the road, and this recipe is actually one that I used to make when I was a teenager. And today we're going to be making a blackberry cobbler. So what I have here is 7 cups of fresh blackberries that are grown locally, and we're going to add this to our bowl. Along with that, we have 1 cup of sugar, 2 teaspoons of cornstarch, 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, and bake it for 10 minutes at 425 degrees. So next we're going to start with our topping, and to that we have 3 cups of all-purpose flour, 1.5 cups of sugar, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And we're going to use a whisk to sift the ingredients together just to disperse it in the flour. Next we're going to add this to a food processor, and we're going to cut our butter into the dry mixture. So now we're going to add this back into our bowl, and we're going to add 1 cup of boiling water to this, and we're going to mix that together. I have some berries that were already baked off for 10 minutes, and we're going to spoon this on top of it. Now we use individual dishes, but like I said, you can certainly use a casserole dish. There's no harm in that. And just drop spoonfuls of the batter onto the fruit. So add the turbinado sugar to the batter, and this will create a crunchy texture on top of the dough. And you're going to bake this for 15 to 20 minutes at 425 degrees, just until it's golden brown and the fruit is bubbling, and allow it to rest for about 45 minutes before serving. We like to serve this with a homemade buttermilk ice cream, but you can use any ice cream that you like. This dessert is easy and delicious, and it can certainly be customized to any fruit that is in season.
You know, I really enjoy growing these heirloom tomatoes, and I'll even push the season really late. I know these may be a little late, but once they germinate, we'll get them out in the ground and see what they do. Now these, on the other hand, are Abe Lincolns, and they're coming along, and I think they'll set a lot of fruit before the first frost, so we're in good shape there. If you'd like more information about anything you've seen in today's show, or sources for some of these delicious heirloom plants, just go to my website, pallensmith.com. Until next time, from the garden, I'm Alan Smith.
In this garden I dream of a bed of flowers. Bluebirds sing of the beauty all around us. And every time the sun comes out, I can't help but smile. Oh, no, I can't help but smile.